your mirror and look into it. You are invited to create brave space, in the words of Black activist Mickey Scott Bay Jones, Director of Healing Justice Initiatives at the Faith Matters Network. Together, we will create brave space, because there is no such thing as safe space. We exist in the real world, we all carry scars, and we have all caused wounds. In this space, we seek to turn down the volume of the outside world. We amplify voices that fight to be heard elsewhere. We call each other to more truth and love. We have the right to start somewhere and continue to grow. We have the responsibility to examine what we think we know. We will not be perfect. This space will not be perfect. It will not always be what we wish it to be, but it will always be our brave space together, and we will work in it side by side.
So what are we doing here today? What's this teach-in worship all about? Because after all, we have talked about racism before, many times actually. So what's different about today? Today's different because we're holding up the mirror to ourselves as Unitarian Universalists, the folks who lift up love and justice, the inherent worth and dignity of each and every person, the people who are seeking to create beloved community on this earth. We're doing this teach-in in solidarity with over 600 UU congregations who will be looking at how we collectively, as a progressive faith, have perpetuated white supremacy culture within our own beloved tradition. Because you see, we have been complicit in a pattern of perpetuating white culture within our faith, going all the way back into the 1800s. African Americans who discovered our faith were not always warmly welcomed. Ministers of color seeking support to start Unitarian and Universalist churches were politely shut down or ignored completely. Ministers of color who have supreme qualifications were turned down over and over again by congregations. This still happens today. Those who marched in Selma and worked for civil rights were not universally appreciated. Attempts at seriously addressing racism in our ranks have flared up and then sputtered out over and over again in the last 50 years. Tone deafness, things like inviting General Assembly attendees to a Thomas Jefferson ball in period costume, left our black friends in faith wondering if they should be attending in rags and chains. The litany of incidents, things like at General Assembly, people in elevators assuming the black youth are hotel workers and treating them with disrespect, which is bad even if they were hotel workers. All kinds of incidents, decisions and non-actions, non-decisions are part of who we are. And recently, just recently, we reached a tipping point as a very qualified Latina candidate for a senior position in the Unitarian Universalist Association staff was passed over for also a very qualified white cisgender straight male, perpetuating a long-standing pattern of the senior staff positions going to white folks. So when Cristina Rivera decided to speak out, She ignited a firestorm of top-level resignations and a call to the denomination to really look in the mirror, acknowledging the complicity of us all, and to begin the process of moving forward with new heart, new sensibility, a new awareness, and a new commitment to racial justice, starting in our own backyard. The UUA board has appointed a trio of interim co-presidents. The president who did resign was due to have his term end June 30th at General Assembly. A new president will be elected, so we have these three interims. They're all very accomplished people of color who are leading us in these very uncharted waters. And there is a group within our denomination called Black Lives of UU, and they asked congregations to devote worship today to a teach-in, and so we are. We start this conversation today, and I say start because this is a huge conversation. This conversation will likely last each of us until our last breath, and it will continue on with the generations to come. For we're talking about nothing less than a revolution of radical love, radical truth-telling, and radical justice as we seek to dismantle the racism within our own ranks and, importantly, in the wider culture. Undoing over 500 years of racist oppression in America will not happen all at once. But we are each called to do our part in our time as people who truly do believe in the saving power of love, and that together we can use our collective power to create more justice and equity in our world. So today we are looking in the mirror. By the way, if you don't have one, I believe that Brent still has some in the rear, and you can pop back there and get one. The mirrors reflect not just our individual selves, but rather the collective we. We invite you to turn your mirror toward each other. And also, as the service progresses, please turn your mirror toward the person who is speaking, so that together we reflect our reality. You'll also note that there is a half sheet of paper tucked into your order of service. It's got some questions on it. It's a place where you can share your wonderings, your questions, and what you'd like to learn more about as we continue our journey beyond today, because we will be continuing the journey beyond today. So feel free as the service progresses to jot down your thoughts. We're going to be collecting them during the offering and then studying them and seeing what your sharings tell us as we create some additional learning opportunities for the future. And thank you all, thank each and every one of you for being in this brave space today, being open-hearted and open-minded with your participation. So we're going to start our journey with a video from a guy named Jay Smooth, an anti-racism activist in the New York area who has both black and white heritage. And he gives us some clues about why it's hard for whites to talk about racism.
Joan Johnson Lewis, a white activist, shares, "I will admit, and most white anti-racists have been through this, that first hearing white supremacy was like a sock in the stomach, and I wanted to get reactive. But I've learned in anti-racist work that as a white person, every time I feel that sock in the stomach, it's time to listen and learn. And when I did, I realized, yes, we are living in a white supremacy culture, and it is there in our institutions too. Blindness to it is part of white privilege. Spending more energy trying not to make white people defensive than in listening and learning is part of white privilege.
Our white fellow UU, Alex Capitan, observes that we hear the words white supremacy and our defenses go up immediately. Oh my goodness, that's not me.
But white supremacy is not a me thing. It's a we thing about a system or social order that keeps power and resources consolidated among white elites, using a way of understanding the world that upholds whiteness, including white people, white cultural values, and white institutions as being best or most normal.
It's not about extremist racist people like David Duke or white separatists in northern Idaho or the KKK. Those folks are white supremacists. They are the far fringe of the cultural system of white supremacy. They are not what we are talking about.
White supremacy culture is the water we swim in. We don't even notice it because it is as pervasive and natural to us as water is to a fish. The culture depends on interlocking, mutually enforcing elements that include
the belief that white people are inherently or naturally more intelligent, attractive, or innocent than others.
Norms around what is considered professional dress, speech, and behavior, and the fact that Band-Aids are made in white skin tones and Crayola crayons have one color described as flesh.
The dominance of white representation in movies, television, and magazines, and the way news outlets report on crime differently depending on the race of the victims and the perpetrators.
government patterns and laws, such as immigration policy designed to benefit migrants from European countries, and the fact that 90% of elected U.S. politicians are white.
Police, school officials, prosecutors, and judges treating white people as inherently innocent are worthy of second chances. And the fact that white people can generally depend on police for help.
The fact that banks approve mortgages for white people 90% of the time. And the fact that the average white household has 16 times the wealth of the average black household. Yet more than half of federal asset building subsidies go to the wealthiest 5% of tax-paying households, keeping wealth accumulating among those who already have it.
Textbooks being written from the perspective of white people and presenting a racially biased, one-size-fits-all version of various subjects, or school funding policies that have led to schools that are 90+% white having $773 more for each student annually than schools that are 90+% non-white.
Portraying Jesus as white, or the white missionary practice of working to save non-Christian people of color.
Associating the word white and things that are white, like snow, with concepts like pure, clean, and safe, or upholding certain white accents and dialects as the most proper way to speak English.
Part of the power of this system is that most individual white people are not conscious of it. Supporting white supremacy does not require hatred or even dislike of non-white people, nor does it require an active or conscious belief that white people are better than everyone else. The system works to keep white people at the center of what's considered normal or default, without most white people even being aware of it.
American is popularly understood to be synonymous with white. White supremacy undergirds almost everything the general public takes for granted about what American culture is.
The genocide, land seizure, slavery, and indentured servitude perpetuated against non-white peoples in order to found and build this country was justified for centuries by propaganda that non-white people were naturally inferior or even subhuman. Far from being dead and gone, this origin of the United States lives on, woven into every fact of life in this country.
It's important to note that not all white people benefit equally from white supremacy, because the ultimate aim of white supremacy is not to benefit all white people, but rather to keep power and resources consolidated and accumulated among white elites, wealthy, male, able-bodied white people who have a long-standing monopoly on power and resources.
The reality means that white supremacy negatively affects the vast majority of white people. It is to a far lesser degree than it affects people of color, because the vast majority of white people are not exceedingly wealthy, able-bodied men. It also means that patriarchy, classism, and ableism are tangled in a mutually reinforcing way with white supremacy.
So, know your vocabulary and use white supremacy accurately. It's not active hatred of people who are not white, or active belief that white people should rule over everyone else. It's not limited to the most overtly racist fringe elements of society. It's not a slur or an insult. It's not a historical artifact. Rather, it's the water most white people swim through without realizing they are wet. It's a basic fact of U.S. culture and everyday life, and the foundational truth of this country.
The past few days, some of my Unitarian Universalist ministerial colleagues have had the good fortune to be in New York City with some of the most amazing interfaith leaders on our planet at the Revolutionary Love Conference. As together, we marshal our spiritual resources to effectively resist the very real forces of evil operating so openly and wantonly in the world right now, and also to set about the important work of the deep culture shift that's needed to save us all. And I don't say that lightly, save us all. Now, my white colleague, David Miller, who's been there, is posting on Facebook, and he shared this observation just last night. He said, "Here are some things I'm learning and processing. We can't always just be acting. We must get to know each other more deeply, and to use our activism to become closer to what is in us, what's between us, and what's beyond us. We also have to spend some time reflecting where our anger, our pain, personal wounds impact our strategy and decisions. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't have anger, pain, and wounds. In fact, these things can motivate our action, but just reflect how these filters move through us and the people around us. This is part of our spirit of inquiry. Whose stories haven't we heard yet? We do this in the service of the question of how we are not just being against things right now, but trying to change the conditions that bring forth continued oppression. So we're called to deeply listen in a spirit of humility and curiosity as we seek to transform our white supremacy culture. Black Lives of UU have asked us to listen and take them seriously. Really listen. That's something that white people don't often do, quite honestly. Because we get stressed out and we get defensive. And sometimes we just walk away from the conversation or the situation. It's hard for us to listen, really listen, and sit with the reality of our friends of color, what their lives are really like, what their experiences have really been. We're going to explore some more about white fragility, as it's called, some other day, because there's way too much to unpack that fully today. But for now, I ask you to listen to some real voices of Black UUs. First, we'll hear from our own J. Rod Garrett, who readily and courageously volunteered to participate in this service of learning. And then we'll hear briefly from one of the Black Lives of UU, one of their leaders, a woman named Leslie Mack. We're sharing an excerpt from the closing ceremony from last year's General Assembly, where she talks about the reality of people of color in our denomination. So let's listen and let's reflect with our mirrors, facing toward J. Rod in sacred witness to his words.
This is a poem called Yellow Wallpaper. I warn you, most of the things that you will hear in this poem happen. Against the backdrop of sunshine, Ninja Turtles fought against sorcery while electric tape ninjas built buck skyscrapers filling the skies in my bedroom. The tang of ketchup sandwiches, caviar to my tongue. It was the backdrop to a perfect life. Mom never took me to the zoo. Instead, each winter we left bread out for the deer. We watched them from the kitchen window. There our bright eyes met as they grew fat off bread and grass. I asked if they wanted ketchup. She told me deer don't like tomatoes. That first summer, I played Tarzan back and forth on the vines of the grand willow tree in our front yard. I pulled several thin leafy vines together to swing through jungles. I invited the boys down the road to come play. They called me nigger and said I didn't belong there. I stopped looking for playmates. Except when our pastor asked me to join Scouts. His face lit up, speaking of the memories, so I said yes. Though I was confused when our Scoutmaster canceled our meetings. My fragile faith burst when the kids at church told me I didn't belong there. So they started 10 minutes later. School was no different. A child saw my skin, an invitation for bruises. I cowered under his blows until one day I struck back. Nigger was the least of my names then. Violent, aggressive, angry were written on my permanent record. I isolated myself on the edge of the playground, staring at the sun. I thought it beautiful, until it called me blind and a doctor put glasses on my face. For years, this was my life. My only refuge was my home. And I was glad to see my mom hand fistfuls of money to our landlord for 4 years to lease to own this home. Until one day a white car belonging to the real estate company required we moved, or pay them the money we stole from them for the past 3 years. So I packed up my ninjas, ketchup sandwiches, and fists into my old skyscrapers, and we moved to another home with sunshine walls. When we moved in, I turned the lights out. I couldn't spend another moment in the light waiting for the day it would tell us, you don't belong here. I wrote the poem Yellow Wallpaper some years ago to help introduce you to, or not just you, but others to uncomfortable subjects. Some of you may feel uncomfortable as you consider your own memories as I speak today. And I encourage you to hold space for this discomfort. I need discomfort to grow and learn as I learn about whiteness, white supremacy, and racism. I expect that there is a commonality between us that you do as well. Don't run away from feeling uncomfortable. This is one of the ways you can honor my heritage. I don't get to run away from being black any day, any week, any year, any moment. The discomfort you feel momentarily, I live with all the time. Race has been a problem, not race. Excuse me, racism has been a problem in our country from the beginning. I was doing grad school a few months ago, and we learned back in 1609, we started making boarding schools for the Indians so that we could teach them how to be more white. We're looking at 400 years of this. And there's this really fierce determination we have in our society that stems from them, which is, this is a problem. Hey, the next generation might be able to handle it. Pass the buck. We have done it over and over and over again. Make no mistake, if we are to face up to whiteness, white supremacy, and racism, we must face the 400 years of oppression in the face and tell it, you were wrong. You left us a legacy of wrong, and we will tirelessly strive to undo all that you did. Of course, you may wonder how I deal with white supremacy on a daily basis. Allow me to unpack some of the ways for you. Some of my friends have said, you are the whitest black person I know. Of course, on the surface, this doesn't seem bad, but what is the real message here? Am I not black because I am well dressed? Because I'm not wearing gold chains, thugged out? Or is it because I'm educated, because I can speak my mind clearly and thoughtfully, instead of being like, I'll ask you a question? Or is it because I'm kind, and the images that we so often see of black folks are violent, where they are killing each other in the streets? See, this comment means I have to determine whether you consider white to mean that being white is to be educated or to be well dressed or to be kind. And then it disregards the entire legacy of people such as Maya Angelou, Nikki Giovanni, Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, who were all these things. Kind, educated, well-dressed. They demonstrate this idea of whiteness being those things, demonstrates that black people can be domesticated if we just get enough training. We have a word for this domestication. It is called assimilation. Instead of upholding the culture of those who may be marginalized, we denigrate it. We mock it. We make slight of it to those who belong to it, not wanting to belong to it. You see, part of my story is I didn't want to belong to black communities for the longest time. On one hand, I had people telling me to be black was to support gangs, thugs, and drugs. And on the other hand, I lived on a home where my mother would tell me how dangerous white people could be, yet never introducing me to anything of black culture other than gospel music. And gospel music is good, folks. It's really good. But it is not enough. And even when I went to school, there is this thing where it's like, why are all the black kids over there? And I go and talk to them and they seem to just disperse. I don't know if that had to do with they thought I was too white or the religion I belonged to at the time. I just know I felt alienated in all of the worlds. Not only the world where I went to church, but also the world where I went to school, and also the world where I came home and learned nothing of my heritage. Note, though, my blackness has always shined through. You may have noticed that I am kind of loud. Slightly. And I'm unapologetically loud. Actually, I was coming home the other day, and my family, it was night out, and it's like, shh, we need to be quiet, J-Rod. And I'm like, hey, we don't need to be quiet. People are sleeping, let them sleep. You need to be quiet. Because I don't. As especially if you tell me to be quiet, that's actually the very last thing I'm likely to do. I know the value of quiet. I'm a writer. I spend hours by myself in a room. There is nothing there but the clicking of keys and my mind whirling. It's similar to a computer, just less buzzy. And my blackness also shines through the fact that despite my questionable rhythm that people said, like, you have no rhythm, how are you black? I have soul. So I traded rhythm for soul. So I have a little bit extra soul because that rhythm thing, it's a little shaky. Soul is the idea that you deeply embody what you speak of, sing of, or act of. My blackness also shines through my reconciliation throughout my life of how things are whitewashed. We listen to the young people here this morning being told, we live in a world that's whitewashed. I remember growing up wondering, where are the books about black people? I remember picking up a book about Frederick Douglass and oh my God, there's a story about one black person. I read that book from cover to cover. It was exciting. It was important. That was the only black person I found in print growing up. Despite the fact that there's tons of books out there on Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. and Maya Angelou writes poetry and Nikki Giovanni writes poetry and there's the Harlem Renaissance. I knew about none of those things. Some of you may not know about any of those things. But who here has heard of Game of Thrones? It's okay to raise your hand here. Participation is encouraged. How many people watch Friends? I really hate that show. I'm so not going to raise my hand for that. And note, we have these Marvel superhero things. The entire storyline of the Avengers has 2 black people in it. And they are pretty much had moments of screen time in comparison to all their white counterparts. That's one of the hard things. There's not enough literature out there to make us a diverse world. White is default. White is normal. When you take something and make it normal and default, it also becomes superior. Because if white is normal, then being black, or brown, or red, or yellow, and even if you're green, if you're sick, that's abnormal. Because I live in a society where white is superior, I made choices. I chose to allow parts of my blackhood to be cut off. I didn't, and even though I wanted those books so badly, let's be honest, I could have done the work. I could have gone out and tried to figure out where can I find these things. But I didn't. I didn't educate myself on the way that people in the hood live. I didn't educate myself to understand that rap is so often talking about a war inside of a culture where police are harassing black people, or the fact that it's a war between gangs who are just simply trying to actually say, I have a place here. I didn't get close with other black folks because of the fear that I received from my white counterparts. I allowed that to build my world. It defined my relationships, and ultimately it stripped me of one of the cultures I should have been most intimately familiar with. That yellow wallpaper came to define my life. And I found myself in time mutilated and small because I didn't know how to speak about what I had lost. But in the past few years, I began to really feel the wounds of what kept me small. And I began to see the racism that surrounded me. You see, one of the reasons people assimilate is to shield themselves from the constant assault of whiteness upon their minds. If you can simply assimilate, you can ignore comments like, you're the whitest black man I know, or, J-Rod, your blackness is the least significant thing about you, or, man, all those black people know how to do is sell drugs, shoot people, and get sexed. Don't you agree? From people being racist to never finding my own when I went to school, to dealing with how a church claims to care about me, and watching how their portrayals of love felt like hate. It's heartbreaking. It's isolating. One of the things you'll hear as we continue these types of conversations is that black people or people of color are not here to educate you on whiteness. I am here today because I love you. I do not feel threatened here. These words are hard for me to speak. And I feel that there is meaning in sharing them with you. And I am willing to share discomfort with you that we may have a better world. But there will be days and times I'm going to be like, see that? That's my cave over there. And I'm going to go hide in it. Because I can't deal with this anymore. Someone once asked me what I need from my friends who are white during times when I am feeling crushed by the burden of racism. Whether it be people of color who have been killed, whether it be comments that have been made to me, or it's simply I am feeling the wounds that I have suffered in my life. And during those times, I simply need love. Whether it's a smile, a hug, consolation. And no, I may even need alone time. Trust me, I can ask you for what I need. But the worst thing you can do is ignore my pain. Or ignore the pain of my brothers and sisters of color who are around. Whitewashing is the form of white supremacy that leads to the magic trick of color vanishing. Being colorblind is the worst thing. I see all the colors. And no, when I disambiguate white, I see German, I see Irish, I see Dutch, I see Spanish. Whiteness hurts everyone because those cultures vanish from American culture when we do that. And I don't want any of our cultures to vanish from anything.